Thank you for tuning in to the Chairs Chat, co-hosted by your Lee County Chairman, Mercedes Price Harry, and Vice Chairman, Grant Fichter.
All right. Welcome, people. This is the Chairs Chat. We're going to talk with Mercedes Price Harry and Grant Fichter. Both the Mercedes is the chair of the LeeGOP here in Lee County, Florida, and Grant is the vice chair. So the whole idea of this is to get to know both of them and just kind of talk and learn a little bit about them. So welcome.
Thank you.
How you guys doing today?
Very good.
Good.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, no problem.
We're excited.
No problem. So we just want to, ask you some simple questions. We'll start with you, Grant. Let us know a little bit about your history, your past, where you're from.
Yeah, so thank you for that. So native Floridian, native Lee County. Been here in Lee County, our family has for 5 generations. So I'm the 5th generation, I guess 6 generations because my children are the 6th generation Alva residents in Northeast Lee County. Back when my great-grandmother came here, there was about 107 people living in the Lee.
Pre the 1900s?
Yeah, 1876.
Wow.
So she was a Civil War widow, came down here with her 7 children and homesteaded an area there right near the center of Alva and started citrus farming, cattle. So that's the deep history.
Where did she come from? Where did she move from?
She came from outside of Atlanta, so it's southern part of Georgia.
Sure. Okay.
I guess that maybe central Georgia.
Yeah. Mercedes knows that area well.
Yeah.
We lived there for a while.
That's right.
And
what town?
That I don't know.
Oh, okay.
So
Cool.
There's still a lot of unanswered questions about our family history, like I think most people, but learn and we're losing some of the older generations that know these things.
Yeah.
So I've been that's basically the deep history of the family. More modern times is my brother and I are still out there on the family property, still keeping our hands in the agricultural side of things.
Yeah.
So I got 3 children, married for 23 years to my wife, Amy.
Okay.
I'm a land surveyor, so I really enjoy that profession. I get to work with a lot of civil engineers and civil engineering projects and get involved in my children's schools and the community and the local museum and the fire department and all these different things, just trying to stay engaged in my community and help where I can.
So your family in Alva, were they farmers or cattle?
It's bounced back and forth between citrus and cattle.
Cool.
But citrus was kind of the primary function of their their work there over time. And they're still growing citrus there today. So and citrus has taken quite a hit over the last 20 years. So they're kind of doing some experimental stuff now to...
Was it disease that got it, or was it...
canker?
Yeah, greening, canker, and then greening. Yeah, but now there's a syphilid or some sort of bug that the Asian syphilid.
Okay.
That's out there doing its damage.
Good times.
Yeah. So does your family sell to like big box Tropicana type companies?
That not to my knowledge.
Okay.
No, it's been many moons since they were a real functional citrus
manufacturing
operation.
Outfit. Gotcha.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that'd be kind of neat if
Yeah, I'm sure at some point they did, but yeah, nothing now
drinking
because
a glass
they
of
had to shift.
Fichter orange juice.
So growing up in Alva, I think we're the same exact age, which is crazy. We have same birthday
Literally
and everything.
same day, same year, same.
So you're
That's
50
wild.
years old,
That's
November,
right.
and November kid.
Coming up on 51.
Oh, don't say it. How has Alva changed in that amount of time?
Yeah.
It's remarkable. It's changed, but not as much as just about everywhere else that I've been in Florida. So I get to travel the state a lot, and I have over the last 25, 30 years doing land surveying projects, and I've seen these small communities and small towns just change dramatically. And Alva's been able to maintain some of that small town charm and the lower density. And there's been a lot of people over the years that have fought for conservation and environmental preservation out there, because we know Lee County is we're expanding in every other area of Lee County. So that area historically has been somewhat protected through the efforts of one of our commissioners previously, Frank Mann. The late Frank Mann was a big advocate of preservation in the Alva area. We've got several people over time. Jim English, one of my second cousins, was huge in the conservation of that area and throughout Lee County. He's fought for conservation in other areas as well. So it's kind of that, that balance between capitalism, which is such a big part of America and a big part of opportunity, and conservation. Conservation and how can we protect the environment while still maintaining the freedoms and the capitalist ideals.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So there's a balance there. But that's a great question.
Yeah.
I'm thankful to say that it's not drastically changed, but we're facing a lot of incoming changes or potential changes from the housing developments and stuff that will impact the area. Babcock Ranch being a big part of that. But Babcock has in many ways respected the town of Alva and given us buffers and space away from their city center. So it's been good.
Okay. Well, cool.
Yeah,
Well, thank you.
Interesting.
Mercedes, I know your story, but other people probably don't. So let's hear about your childhood, where you're from, all that good stuff.
So I'm a military brat. My dad was in the Marine Corps for 30 years, and my mother an immigrant from Costa Rica. And so my mother had me, in the 70s. I'm a couple years younger than you guys, and did not meet my father until I was about 18 months. And shortly after my 2-year birthday, they got married, and my dad ended up adopting me when I was 8. So that's when I became a Price. But I have an older sister, and then once my mother and father got married, they had my younger brother and sister, and we're all just one family, right? My dad is my dad. But it's funny when people see my dad and me, because my dad is from Kansas, so grew up on a farm. My grandmother was a Campbell, which was, and the Campbell family was all over Kansas and Nebraska. They're pioneers. But my father is a Price, obviously. So my grandmother was a big farmer, as was my grandpa to some degree. Anyway, my father grew up in rural Kansas, and so it's funny to see me with my dad, because he's my dad, but my dad is like this blonde-haired, green-eyed Kansas boy, and then here I am with this like big curly hair. But nonetheless, grew up in California, DC, born outside of Philly, spent a lot of time in Kansas in between. Moved to the Southeast when I was in my teens, where my father was stationed in Cherry Point and then Paris Island.
Yes.
Went off to college at Georgia Southern, which is where I met you.
Yep.
And, growing up, I think we didn't grow up political at all, but I always loved my America. The America that I grew up in was awesome. And I don't know if it was just because we're Gen X, and so we grew up in the 80s and 90s when things were amazing, and this whole barrier of gender, race, blah, 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 none of that existed. But growing up in Southern California, right on the beach, so we lived in the housing right on the Oceanside Harbor. So we would slide down the back. We'd slide down dirt hills down the back through a hole in the fence off of Camp Pendleton. And we'd go down to the harbor and we'd walk around and hang out. So I always grew up in this beautiful weather and this beautiful culture. And then growing up in the Southeast, growing up on bases, it was such a culture shock for me. But I always enjoyed everywhere I went, and always had incredible experiences and never felt any barriers in life. And so I just always did my own thing and went to college to do speech communication. I wanted to be a news anchor.
Yeah, you actually had somewhere, I think you still have the actual videos of you.
Oh, that'd be great to see those.
So I did a little stint at the local TV station in college, and then I had a radio show at 93.3 WVGS. I did 80s with Mercedes before I went on to do techno music. Awesome. So I did techno music back in the late 90s when nobody really cared about techno music. I was all into techno music and electronic dance music. Met my husband, Brian, and we dated for several years. So we've been married 21 years, going on 22. 2003. Started dating in 96. So we were babies. I was only 19, 20 when we met. Have 2 children. My boy Adler is about to be 15, and my girl Anara is about to be 11. and just living the life, man. I went from being a pharmaceutical sales representative straight out of college because I didn't realize, you're putting yourself through school, you're working multiple jobs, you're just trying to make ends meet, you're trying to chase your passion, which was for me at the time broadcasting. And then I graduated and realized the only thing I could do was be a production assistant for $10 an hour. So that wasn't going to cut the 40 grand in student loan debt that I had accumulated. And that's when I got into sales. I got into the medical industry, first as a recruiter for nurses, and then got into pharmaceutical sales. And that's kind of what I did when we moved here. I transferred down here in 2003 just for fun. We were young, dinks, right? Double income, no kids. And then when I had my boy, they had a huge worldwide layoff with the company at that time. And that's when I went into business entrepreneurship and business ownership. Ran my own businesses for about 7 or 8 years, sold those off in 2018 because you really can't do it all. You really can't be a mom and a wife and a business owner and do politics, which I had gotten into at that time. So anyways, took time off doing that, worked for a friend, and then tripped into politics. Now I'm a director for the local congressman, something I never in a million years thought that I would do. I actually don't like the government, so it's bizarre to work for the government, but that's what I do now. And then, now chair of the REC with Grant as the vice chair and still
Cool.
working as a
awesome.
director.
Let me ask both y'all this. I'll go back to Grant. When you were a kid, 16, 15, 14, and maybe I already know this answer, but what was your first job? What was the first thing you did?
Good
I was a parts delivery person.
Okay.
So strange. My dad was a mechanic. He was a Vietnam vet.
Wow.
So he came back from Vietnam. He was a helicopter mechanic in Vietnam and came back and became an auto mechanic. My brother was started as an auto mechanic. My kind of childhood revolved around auto mechanics. So when there was a parts house, local parts house here in Fort Myers that needed a
Nice.
kid to run around and deliver parts within within the building. So it was a large property, shop on Fowler Avenue, Powers Radiator, really
Okay.
cool. At the time, probably the
only
biggest
place, yeah.
auto repair place around here. But there was easily 30 mechanics in there,
Wow.
and all day long they're working on multiple vehicles, and they're calling me, I need this
Run it
part.
again?
And
Yeah.
so I go up into the warehouse, grab the part, run out there, and
Cool.
of course I heard every dirty joke in the book, and had a lot of fun. It was a good first job experience, and then I think shortly after that, once I got driver's license, I was bagging groceries. So
I did that too.
That's
That was
where it
actually my
started.
first job.
which I still, every time I go to Publix, I jump right in there and
paper or
keep my
plastic.
skills.
What
Yeah.
about the one? I want the paper inside the plastic, and you're like, oh, come on, you're killing me, lady.
Good old Piggly Wiggly.
Yeah, so
Really
mine was
good.
Piggly Wiggly. I don't know.
Winn-Dixie.
Nice.
Yeah, Winn-Dixie,
Nice.
which I think is now going to be all Aldi. So
Yeah.
it's finally
Really?
phasing out, I'm
Aye.
afraid.
Do you know what I miss? People rave about Publix fried chicken. I'm sorry, the best fried chicken was Albertsons. Do y'all remember Albertsons?
Yes, I do.
Man,
41
they had
in
the
Colonial. There was
best
one there.
fried chicken. I'll tell you
Yeah.
what.
That was
So
great.
yeah, Publix is a little too
Wh-
salty.
Let me
for
ask you a little something about your childhood.
Yeah.
So, living in all those places, did you have a favorite place?
Ooh, good question. Definitely California.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it was just so beautiful.
Yeah.
And again, we lived right on the Oceanside Harbor, and everything about California was so pretty. This is the 80s, right? So
Yeah.
we moved there, and I think it was 81. No, maybe it was 82. And by the 90s, we were in the Southeast.
Back
so.
then, even California was proud to be American.
Oh,
Absolutely.
yeah. That was the Reagan era.
Yeah.
And it was so, I listened to Tucker Carlson talk about himself growing up. He's about maybe six or 7 years older than me. And I listened to him, and it's so similar, our experiences of growing up in California. It was just such a beautiful place, and it was such a beautiful time, and, love the 80s music. And
Yeah, me too.
yeah, but that would be my favorite. Although, in retrospect, the Low Country is pretty impeccable. So, but I didn't spend a whole lot of time there. I was only there for about 2 or 3 years, really 2 years before I left for college. So then it just became a place that I visited to see my parents. But the Low Country,
Talking Beaufort, South Carolina.
Beaufort, South Carolina. Oh my gosh, just stunning, gorgeous. And the people were fun and great. I mean, we moved my senior year from North Carolina to South Carolina, which would have been devastating otherwise, and was actually devastating for my big sister when we moved from California to North Carolina her senior year. For me, it was amazing. It was like the best year
really
of
neat.
my entire like high school year. Yeah. So either the low country or Southern California. Either way, I am not made for the cold. I'm like the cold, and I do not. No,
That's where we're
You're in
opposites.
the right place.
we don't
there.
mix.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
we don't
love
mix.
I love the cold. I hate this summer happening now. I absolutely
Yeah,
can't
it's
stand
gonna get
it.
brutal.
3 more months of hell, and then back to good old Florida.
That's
love
right.
it. I love it.
Question for you, Mercedes.
Yeah.
Back to that, your first job. What was it?
So my first job was I was a babysitter, and so I had my own babysitting service by the age of 10, and I had a whole slew of clients.
Imagine, is there anybody that's 10 today that babysits?
No, you
no
can't
way.
even leave your 14-year-old alone. People think
Yeah.
you're abusing your
Probably
child,
illegal.
neglecting your child. It's
It
crazy.
probably is illegal. You'd probably go to jail. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Or
think
your
it
kids
is.
will just be taken
I think
from
there's
you.
a law that you have to be maybe 12 or 13
That was another
to be left alone
another
with children.
thing about the 80s and probably any time prior, but more of the 80s because of so many working moms and
yeah.
dads.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, both people in the household worked, so
Right.
kids just got around on their own.
You just
They did.
you did what
Managed.
you could.
Which was a good thing. You know, you run into issues and problems, and they're little or bullies,
Yep.
whatever it might be, but you figured it out and you learned from it.
Yeah, it
And now
shapes
I
you.
think kids today, they're just so sheltered until they finally leave the house, and then they don't even know how to pay a bill or anything.
Well, and they can't
Yeah.
handle conflict. They can't
Yes.
handle conflict, and they can't handle criticism. But my first official job was McDonald's.
Ooh.
Nice.
Just like every Gen Xer.
Fry
my,
cook
my,
or-
my first cashier. Come on.
Oh, all right.
I think the fry cooks were the for the guys, right? They always had the guys in the back doing the cooking, and the girls were
Yes,
always
that
up
would
front
make
doing
more sense.
cashier.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. I made $4.25 an hour.
That's I think
that-
that was my starting pay
That
at
was
Winn
me.
Dixie.
$4.25.
$4.25.
I actually I left and I went to Godfather's Pizza where I was delivering pizza, which was amazing because there I made $4.50 an hour and I got
Tips.
$1 per delivery and tips.
Wow.
I was rich.
You were rich.
I was rich. Let me tell you.
Where were you when I was in high school?
Yeah. I could have went to McDonald's and actually ate there at the time.
Yeah.
All right. So back to both y'all. You know, where did you guys go to school? Tell me about. You talked a little bit about. Did you go to college at all?
Yeah, I did, but not till a little bit later in life.
Smart.
So I got out of high school and I
Really?
tried about every trade that I could
Cool.
and got into just got my hands dirty and everything, all these different things that
Yeah.
I could try, and finally fell into surveying and
Cool.
realized that it was a job I wasn't going to master if I worked there for 100 years or if I stayed in it for 100 years. There's just so many things about it that evolve and change with technology, the mathematics, there's so many applications. I mean, so I knew, wow, this is going to be a challenge.
Cool.
So did that for long enough to realize this is what I want to do in life.
Nice.
And then went to school to get a degree. Then I got a bachelor's degree here at Edison,
Oh, wow.
Florida Southwestern
Mm-hmm.
now, in business management and supervision, which all I needed to get my credentials as a land surveyor was the experience and a bachelor's degree with a certain amount of mathematics. So got that done.
Perfect.
Went and got my surveying license, and really just still every day in love with the profession, love what I do.
So for a person like me, I'm clueless as to what a surveyor truly does.
Yeah.
What are you guys doing? I mean, what is it?
Yeah.
I've seen
Most-
the guys out there with the machines and the.
Yeah,
Yeah.
most people glaze over about 30 seconds into this explanation. But it's all, measurements
Okay.
on so many scales. So, the whole state of Florida is all lands in the state of Florida are legally described through geometry and distances
Okay.
and bearings and locations and monuments. And so the public land system is a series of grids throughout the whole state. And it all derives from one location in Tallahassee, which is the prime meridian marker. So every property in the state of Florida has a legal description. That legal description is tied to that one marker in Tallahassee. And you had to survey a piece of property, you have to break it down
Okay.
from there to here. And
Of
that's
course.
just kind of that's land surveying. That's surveying a piece of property
Right.
and knowing where your property lines are. But there's so many other applications. I
course.
mean, we're measuring depths in the ocean. We're using LiDAR to get topographic surveying of all sorts of
Cool.
projects. So there's so much technology right now with the drones, the laser scanning, the hydrographic surveying, but it's all about measurements.
Perfect.
Without surveying, you don't have any infrastructure, you don't have any streets, you don't have any buildings. Every project starts with a surveyor and ends with a surveyor, because the surveyor is going to be there first to lay it out, and he's going to be there in the end to finalize and as-built the site.
Yeah.
So,
So when did
very
you get
cool
started? How
profession.
old were you? You said you did a couple different trades. When did you go to
think
school
I was
then?
23 when I got really into surveying,
Okay.
and then it wasn't until I think I was close to 35 before I started thinking about what I really need to get my degree
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
to get this
Yeah.
license.
Oh, wow. So you didn't graduate college till like your late 30s.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Even later.
Really?
Yeah. It
Huh.
was. I took my time because I
You
was
were
paying
working
as I went.
and had
Yeah.
kids.
I had
and
my children. I
Yeah.
had my career.
That's a smart
That's
thing
me.
to do.
I just chipped away at it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
at the
Sit
time
younger.
I thought, well, this is stupid, but I'm so glad I did it, and I
Yeah.
would encourage anyone that if they have something they want to do, get back in it and
I
go
agree.
for it.
I agree.
So yeah, then I found out. So after I was surveying for a few years, and my dad realized, hey, this looks like he might stick with this. He revealed to me that my grandfather, who had passed away when he was a young man, was a surveyor for the Army Corps of
Oh, wow.
Engineers and was in World War One. And so he brought down this old surveying instrument out of the attic, which is in my office now, and
Very
it's
cool.
the coolest thing. It looks like something that's on a ship. This brass
Right.
compass.
Wow.
Not
the-
made of plastic.
yeah, theodolite.
Yeah,
They
not
call
made
it a
in China.
theodolite. So that's the
Wow.
term for it. But really cool piece of equipment. Then
Nice.
it got me into the family history side of it. And then I started to realize, well, a lot of our founders were land surveyors. George Washington, 3 of the 4 men on Mount Rushmore were land surveyors.
Wow.
So a
Who knew?
lot of American history is
Huh.
rooted in land surveying, because we came to
was all open. Yeah.
we started drawing lines, which
Yeah.
I have different opinions about that
Sure.
now, whether that was a great idea, but the way that's how our country was really built.
Cool. Mercedes, gotta know, when did you start identifying as a Republican? What's the story?
Well, it changes from day to day. No, I'm kidding.
You're political fluid? No.
Yeah, I'm politically fluid.
I'm
Yeah,
kidding, I'm kidding.
I'm non. Well,
Yeah, whatever.
whatever. I'm non-binary. No, I'm teasing. I mean, I say this all the time. Barack Obama. Barack
Yeah.
Obama turned me into a Republican. I was an independent. I knew when I registered to vote that both parties were bad, right? That was like, both parties were bad. So I went independent. And then when Barack Obama came out, I was actually kind of excited. I thought it was really neat that we were going to have a Black president. Growing up the way I grew up, it seemed like that was obviously something that was possible in my lifetime. So I was a little confused by everybody being so intrigued that this could be a possibility. It seemed obvious to me. And so I started digging into his history. And that's when I realized that even though no one had conversations with me about politics and republicanism and America and history and all these things outside of school, that's when I realized that I started to deep dive into the value set that both parties have. And that's when I began to realize that, the Republican values and the core Republican principles were more aligned with my core. And I actually had a good friend when I was a pharma rep. We were hosting a bridal shower for a coworker, and I stayed the night with her and her husband, just hanging out and cleaning up because we were hosting and we were just talking. And that's when they started to question me. You're not a liberal. And I'm like, yeah, I am. Of course I am. I want to take care of people. I like, I'm not racist. I'm not rich. I'm not old. I like to take care of people. And so she started to question me. She and he both started to question me. And when I couldn't answer, it just got the wheels turning. And it was done in a way, because we were friends, I didn't feel like they were attacking me. I was just getting into that whole oh, whatever, I disagree. But then it kind of embarrassed me that I couldn't answer the questions. And that's what got the wheels turning at the same time.
And I remember that so vividly, you ignited, I'd never seen anybody not only just go down a rabbit hole and not only,
Yeah.
but then you haven't stopped.
I haven't stopped. I haven't stopped. I don't know if it's good or bad that I had the revelation, but yeah, I went.
Well, you're
I went,
passionate about it.
yeah,
and
that's my family. Yeah, yeah. I don't normally do. It's just in my nature. I don't normally do things halfway. You know, usually go all the way and then some, almost to a fault.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that statement. After working with you now for some time,
Yeah,
it's obvious that it's great.
But-
It's a great trait to have.
But in reality,
It really
your
is.
core values were always conservative. You just didn't know it.
100%. I mean, I grew up Catholic.
The TV told you, the radio told you that you were
100%.
a liberal. And
Yeah, well, and that's what I tell people too is, you know, we're the MTV generation. And so MTV helped shape my political perspectives because everyone on TV and MTV was very liberal. And, you know, and Bill Clinton was cool, you know, boxers or briefs, right? And
he played the saxophone.
yeah, exactly. He played the sax. He was just so cool. And everybody that was left wing was so artistic and creative and, you know, out of the box. And so, of course, you wanted to be that too, right? You didn't want to be some staunchy guy in a suit. It never occurred to me that, you know, maybe the ones that are the big thinkers are the ones in the suits.
Yeah.
I just thought, oh, they're so staunchy and stiff and I want to be me. And, you know. So.
Yeah, and I feel like what was liberal in the 80s is now would be considered hard right.
Yeah.
100% libertarian.
For the Democrat Party in a lot
pro
of ways. And
war
not
now.
everywhere. But we used to, in my mind, and it's just because I was maybe not as engaged when I was growing up, but it felt like everyone was on the same side. We just disagreed on a handful of things.
Yeah.
But everyone was pro-America. You know, we got to do what's right for America. We got to do what's right for our country. And now it's become very unpopular in some political circles to have pride in America and want what's best for America. Now we have to want what's best for all these other things that really don't help us. So it's a strange migration from where we were to where we're at now, where I wouldn't have seen myself as a real hardcore Republican either, although my dad had me listening to Rush Limbaugh driving around in a car. But that's kind of where my political thoughts started coming in. And I don't know when, and maybe I was 12 years old. I don't know exactly how far back he went, but listening to him over the years, just being in the pickup truck and kind of working and processing those ideas, and then seeing the government function and paying more and more attention, you're like, well, we gotta help this situation somehow.
Yeah, something's not
you
right.
know?
Is that when you kind of, when did you realize then you were Republican or was it?
Reagan had me pretty solidly as a Republican. So as a young, as a kid, that Reagan was kind of the bar that was set for me, and that this is
pretty
what
high
an American
bar.
president should look like. Yeah. It was, he was all about unity and obviously one of the most popular presidents across the board for both parties as far as the votes. So that kind of solidified it for me. And but then I was also, into the MTV and the culture, and I loved all Americans of all. There was never felt like there was a, us and them. I thought it was. I don't really care what race you are, what your background or beliefs or your sexual preferences. It never weighed into my thought process as to how you should be treated as a human being or an American. And because that's become a battle now. It's strange
bizarre
to me.
Well, and I think that's why Gen X saved us in 2024. It was Gen X that had the largest amount of votes for the Republican candidate, which was Donald Trump. We had the largest percentage. And I think it was because we are the generation that saw the dichotomy from what it was like when we were growing up versus now. And, we're the ones raising children in this environment that is toxic. And we didn't grow up like that. So for us, it's like, wait a minute, this is not right. Whereas anybody maybe 35 and under or 30, I would say maybe late 20s and under, they have a completely different perspective than we do because they did not see the other side. Some of the millennials are, pretty good. They're kind of like us. Like the girls that I work with are all in their early to mid 30s, and they think like we do. And so I think that's why we really came out in force, because we're like, no, we're not doing this anymore. This is not how it is. This doesn't make sense. And so we came out in force, thank goodness.
I almost feel like
got a long
in
way
the
to go.
past, we talked, the Reagan era, I believe the left they wanted what was best for America. I believe the right wanted what was best for America. No, wait, hear me out. But we had different paths to get there. We believed in our core conservative values. But now I look at the left and I don't think they want what's best for America anymore. I don't think they even care.
Yeah.
Whereas I think the right is like, hey, we need to steer this ship back this way, or else we're going over this cliff, and we don't have much time.
Well, I think that the left is void. And I say this only because the party voted to remove God from the platform in 2012. But you'll find that, this is another thing that you learn is the left was always anti-Christian, right? Growing up, Christianity was so conservative and lame and boring and, staunchy. And so, that's where all the atheists come from. So I think that there's just a completely different value set in terms of what our core is and what we want with it. I don't know. I don't know what I'm getting at. I think I'm kind of getting off the reservation, but.
Yeah. And I think when, you talked about religion and them maybe pulling away from that.
That's what I was getting at really quick. So they've filled the void of faith and purpose with this political movement. That's what I was trying to get at.
I hadn't really thought of it that way.
If you don't have any purpose in life, then of course you're going to hyperventilate about illegals, right? And then of course you're going to hyperventilate about abortion. You have no core purpose in life, whereas we have the Lord, or the Torah, whatever you decide that you want to put your faith in. They don't have a faith.
Yeah, it is very important to have a spiritual side.
Yes,
and I think that's
a grounding,
been proven over and over again.
Yep.
Especially as you make your way into your older years, having that spiritual connection is critical to your mental health.
Yeah. 100%.
But in the end, we talk about religion, and of course that's a rabbit hole we probably don't want to go down entirely. But if you just follow the principles of most religions, there's let's take the 10 Commandments, for example. It's not a bad thing to go by. It's not awful.
Works
it's not
pretty well, doesn't it?
Not a terrible set of things to strive for,
Yes.
Let's be good to each other. Let's not steal from each other.
Right. Don't kill each other. I
think it's pretty basic. I don't know that you have to be deep into religion to adopt that sort of mentality, which is just kind of should come natural.
Yeah.
I feel like, but of course now that's so foreign.
Right.
So many
now
people,
everyone's going to say, oh, you want to put the 10 Commandments everywhere and infringe on our religious rights.
Yeah. So with that, the Republican Party in the last, several years has, I think, come a pretty long way. I think they've kind of, I say united, but they seem to have united a lot of them, at least behind Trump. We'll see what happens. But in what ways do you guys think that the Republican Party, I'm not talking local, but the big whole party, what ways could it improve if you could do that? What would you do? It's kind of a crazy question.
You want me to go first?
You can. I think we're going to have a lot of the same answers, but I'd like to see what your thoughts are.
Well, first of all, I'm very proud of the improvements that the Republican Party has made. Right? We're no longer the war party. Mostly. Right? We're mostly no longer the war party. And, I think that where we could be better, though, is being fiscally sound.
Yeah.
We still are in a position where, even this year's budgets are out at the state level and the federal level are completely unsustainable. And, everybody's got their hand out to the point where there's just too many interests involved. So the political interests that still control our party concern me, and I'm hoping that people can be more principled. I'm a little concerned about the populist movement. I mean, listen, I don't mean that in a bad way. I think that the populist movement is not a terrible thing. I just feel that it takes us away from our Republican principles sometimes, because the populists are going to go with what's popular, and the populist movement is good with all of these financial, these government-backed programs, all these social programs, and with that comes waste and fraud and abuse. And so that's one thing, is I just wish that the Republican Party could be principled and consistent. But again, we're the individualists, so that's hard to get everybody into this groupthink mentality. But for the most part, yes, I would just like to see more principled fiscal conservatism, and
that'd solve a lot of issues.
Yeah.
Especially long term.
Yes, and we've got a lot. We still have special interests that control our party, and we still have just so much
Yeah.
money, and it's
What about you, Grant? What would you say?
Yeah,
How could you improve, or what would you like to see improved? I mean,
And you mean the Republican Party, like as
In
a whole,
general,
not
I'm
just
talking-
Lee
yeah.
County,
I'm
right?
talking
yeah,
everywhere,
I think
yeah.
the image, of this kind of
Yeah.
you went back to the kind of the staunchy, the rich guy in the suit,
Mm-hmm.
and that image that it's just these Caucasian people in suits and
Yeah.
old people and rich people, and that
Caucasian, you're so funny.
couldn't be further, for me,
Yeah.
from it couldn't be further from the truth when
Exactly.
I meet and talk to Republicans. So changing that image to make sure that Americans know that we're like doors open.
Yeah.
We're open to anyone. It's not
Right.
you don't have to be in that
Yeah.
stereotypical group to be a part of this. This is just people who love America, love our Constitution. Want to follow those ideals and
Yeah.
provide everyone an opportunity. And
Want to be left alone?
Yep,
Hell
want
yeah.
to mainly be left alone. So yeah, in addition to that, I think I'd like to see for all politics some term limits. I'd like to
yeah,
get
yeah.
back to
Yeah.
kind of the core of what I feel like our country was founded on, which is we need working men and women that come into politics, do their service, and get back out and let someone else fill their shoes and keep that wheel turning so that new ideas are constantly coming into the party.
Yeah.
And we need to modernize that some and open the doors to a lot of what I would feel like great people
I think even
that never
people
get
on the
that
left
opportunity.
would probably agree with that.
I think so.
But
I mean, you
think
look at
the
like
people
Nancy
in office
Pelosi.
are like, yeah, we'll deal with that later. They don't want to. They're afraid.
Yeah, right.
They're afraid.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. And
Well, can I say something
Sure.
controversial? I
for it.
disagree.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I disagree. We wouldn't have the Ron Pauls of the world if we had only limited him
But
to.
we wouldn't have the Nancy
four-
Pelosi's.
That is true, but if the people of San Francisco and her district really genuinely wanted her out, they could get her out. Does it take hard work? And are the scales so imbalanced in some areas? For sure, but that's where an invested
Right.
population can move the needle. People can be ousted. You just have to care. You just
yeah,
have to
that's
try.
True.
You
No,
just
you're
have,
right.
But
Yeah,
when
it's-
most people don't care and don't try and use like giant yard signs to dictate the way that they vote, well, then you get what you get, right?
That's true. You're right.
So
Yeah,
I
you're
kind
right. That's a
of don't know
very
how I
good
feel.
point.
Yeah, about the term limits. I feel like putting on term limits limits your ability to get things done if you're a good egg.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
if you're there, like
Yeah.
if you get that one person that's really great, well, now like
Now they're
they're
gone.
term limited out. What are we going to do now? And then we replaced him with who? Somebody just because the term limit?
Yeah, I
It's a
guess I'd be
good-
less.
so
I'd be less concerned about term limits if we could kind of, as a party, get back to bringing people that function in society and have done things on kind of like the Trump story.
Yeah.
I
you know?
agree completely.
I love
the
the
answer.
idea that he's not this career like born and bred into this whole
Right.
thing, which I don't think Ron Paul was. So
No,
there's a
he's
lot
not.
of people that didn't grow up underneath other politicians and were kind of forced into this thing. I mean, Joe Biden's an example of this career politician.
Yeah.
Nancy Pelosi, these things that had just continue to go on and on and on. And but you're right, that comes down to the voters at the end of the day. It comes down to a informed and
That's right.
an engaged electorate.
That's right.
And that's probably, and that comes back to messaging. So Republican Party messaging, what's important.
Outreach.
I don't know. Those are the things that
Yeah.
I would like us to do better at. Is just be more open.
Yeah.
Be more welcoming. Because I think people, a lot of people out there that might consider themselves Democrats would be really surprised at what the Republican Party really is if you give it a chance and kind of get past that polarizing news that comes at you that paints this party a certain way, because it's not how we live. It's not how we operate. It's
Yeah.
so
What I always learned with, explaining why you're a Republican is it's so easy to say, oh, you hate the sick and the elderly. And then you have to explain why you want cuts in certain programs, right? So it's very easy to to malign a Republican based on their beliefs, because it's easy to say, oh, you want children to starve. You want to take away SNAP. So you want children to starve. Okay, well, let's stop and take a look at who's getting SNAP, and can there be some reform? That's our question. But it's so easy for them to paint us as, oh, you don't care about children, starving children. So
that's more of a fiscal responsibility thing.
Right.
Again, I know my my family's
explanation.
been, some of my family have been on government assistance with food, and we got a block of cheese.
Yeah.
We got some credits to go to the store and buy food. There was not, going to be any lobster or steaks or abuse of that money. It was really necessary to have nutrition and food. It wasn't about, a kind of, I don't know, manipulating that system. And I'm not saying that's a party thing. That's comes on both sides of the coin.
But how good was that government cheese?
It's really good.
It's real good. It was like the original Velveeta.
I've never had
it would come in a box.
Yes, long box.
Sleeve. Yes.
It must have been.
I bet if y'all were to eat it now, you'd be like, oh.
Oh, I don't even eat Velveeta.
No,
it's not even food.
My great aunt made macaroni and cheese with it, and it was unbelievable.
So good.
And we still can't recreate it.
Is it basically Velveeta, or is it?
It must have been.
I think it was like ghetto Velveeta. Yeah, it was good though. Came in a big box, and then you got your box of food. And I only know this because my mom. So my mom. We could do a whole podcast on it. We should bring my mom. My mom would kill it. But so my dad flipped out on my mom once when he found out she went and signed up for food stamp, or not food stamps. We didn't have food stamps, I think. Well, we had food stamps, but
it was
the big box. She'd showed up to the big truck and pick up her box and bring her box of food home. And when my dad found out, man, he got so mad because we didn't need it. But, my mom was in an environment, obviously at work or wherever, where one of her girlfriends was like, go ahead and sign up. And as,
if you fit the criteria.
That's what I was just about to say. My dad was an officer, but I think even then he was a lieutenant. I don't think they made a lot of money. And my mom was a waitress.
Your mom moved here from Costa Rica, where, living in the 70s and 60s or whatever.
50s, 60s.
Dirt floors and such, right?
Yeah, one of 15. My grandpa was a carpenter. My grandmother was a stay-at-home. Dirt poor, That's why she came here. Yeah, find something better.
All right, so question now, all right, going into it now, you're both here. You're both chair and vice chair of the LeeGOP. What's y'all's vision? I'll start with you, Grant. What's your vision? What do you want to get out of this? How do you want to improve this organization? What do you see?
Wow. So, I've been looking more and more at local politics the older I get here in Lee County, and considered running for a county office of some sort, and then realized, with my career where I'm at in life, maybe that's not a great thing to do. Let me look at other ways I can help the local party. And when I found out and got more and more engaged with the REC, I realized, well, maybe I can help here. And what I mean by help is maybe I guess I see Lee County politics and even on the Republican side somewhat splintered. It's doesn't feel like we're all rowing the same direction on the boat. Feels like kind of we get into a circle, and maybe that's because we've had the benefit of being such a strong red county that we've started to kind of look at each other as opponents rather than what the other political parties out there. So felt like, well, maybe I can bring some of that together. Maybe we can find the strongest of the strong. And I know a lot of good people I've met over the years, teachers, doctors, school bus drivers, just normal folks, business owners that really could get into politics and really make a difference. And I wanted to start helping find those candidates and helping educate the electorate on what we have out here for prospective candidates to keep that momentum that the Republican Party has in Lee County, but to kind of bring it into a new era.
Nice.
And that's what I got involved for. Okay. It's for unity too. I know unity is not a strong conservative word necessarily. Sure. It sounds a little corny, but that's really how I feel. So corny or not, I want us to find where we have common ground and
Right.
stand on that, and
It's interesting
maybe
to
put the
think,
knife down. And
we're all on the same side. We might agree with
machete.
90 or 95%. We probably agree on, and then
That's
there's
right.
that 5% that you're my enemy now, like that.
Especially at the local level, people
Yeah.
will take one issue and all of a sudden you're a rhino
demonize
over
you.
one issue,
Right.
one vote. And I tell people all the time, you don't want to be so libertarian, Republican. Well, you don't. At the local level is where you want to be able to have more control. And so unless you're out there filling your own potholes, then you can't be upset when we're, it's not socialism when we're, using property taxes or county taxes or sales tax, whatever they're, sales tax for the roads. But if you're not out there filling the potholes, if you're not out there funding the schools, if you're not out there educating the children and doing all of the things that the local government does, sanitizing the water, then there's going to be a tax that you'll have to vote on and pay, and the city and the county can take care of it. Now, it's better to vote for that type of tax here than it is at the federal level, right? Because then you maybe have a better chance of rescinding it at the local level. So I guess what I'm just saying is, when I see Republicans get deemed rhinos over a vote to increase a tax, let's say, I almost cringe a little, even though I'm very, very right wing. I'm very right wing. I really believe in voluntarism and all of that. But I see that I'm surrounded by people who aren't like me. They're not self-sufficient for the most part. And so for those people, it's better to have control here and vote for things that will help us. When you're at the federal level voting for everybody to pay for everything, it's a different story. So if you really truly want to be, the Republican that people want you to be, then you would just never vote for anything.
It's not in the
anything.
Constitution.
Right. Every city
these
councilman, every county commissioner would just never get to vote because otherwise you're a rhino, right? If you vote for something.
In public services, we have our taxes, we pay our taxes. We want a certain level of public service to maintain a civilization that we have. Trash service, fire service, schools,
police,
transportation, public transportation. These are things that aren't anti-Republican. These are things that help a functioning society. If we're gonna pay taxes, which we're already there, we're paying taxes. We're not gonna be able to unravel that one and go back to, open range and no taxes and everyone fend for themselves. We're here now. This is our system. And you want the people that are managing those funds that we're all paying for to do it in the right way and localize it. Focus on what's important
as
here.
long as it's done right and done well. And so being a watchdog for that.
We should all advocate for what the best use of our funds.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Mercedes, and just to let people know, really, what's the mission or what's the
objective?
So of the LeeGOP or the any GOP.
Sure. So we have a job description as an executive committee, and this is something I've been really trying to stress because we are off the reservation a little bit on it sometimes as a whole. I just mean, in my 15, 16 years of being involved in the executive committee off and on. And so our objectives are really simple: educate the public. So elections and candidates. Educate the public about elections. When is the primary? When's the last day to register to vote? How do you register to vote? Then there's the candidates, educating people on the candidates. We're not here to pick, although we do have in our bylaws an opportunity, or our county model constitution, the opportunity to endorse. You have to jump through a lot of hoops to do that. And, so for us, it's all about educating people on who the best candidates are and, just teaching people the different aspects of, sorry, 1 second. My phone is ringing and someone's banging on the door. Yeah, sorry. But anyhow, the objectives: educate people on candidates and elections for the most part. Yeah. So our goal is to at least provide an opportunity for people to come here and learn how to run for office, right? So we're going to host a couple workshops on how to run for office. And then we're going to, we're hosting workshops on Robert's Rules of Order. And, next year we're going to host hopefully a slew of events where we can bring people in to headquarters here on 41 and get them to meet the different candidates. Because that's the one thing that people complain about, is they feel like they don't really know who to vote for. As people that are politically involved, I'm sure we all get blown up on election day or during early voting, like, who do I vote for? Can I send you my ballot? You tell me who to vote for?
Every time.
Yeah.
Every time.
And they either don't try, or they don't get
know.
access
life's
to
busy,
Right.
Life's busy.
If
So
you
we're
don't
here
watch-
to kind of make this interesting and get
And
engaged
give our people
with
opportunities,
people. So
yes.
One of the reasons of this podcast, and this is just the infant podcast here, it's going to change. Different people are going to do it. But one of the ideas we spoke of is, to get in, interview local candidates,
Yes,
get to know them,
that'll be exciting.
and then it's out there for people that will take the time and watch a 30-minute
Right.
podcast.
Well, and in Lee County, generally, the only way you can meet a candidate is if you go to some giant event somewhere and it's super crowded, and sometimes it's limited in space, and maybe it's just an organization that's, on a completely different end of the county.
Yeah.
This will give us an opportunity to bring everyone that's running in here, and then you can just watch the podcasts from home and get informed. And I've always told people, you really do need to meet candidates, because a picture and a flyer doesn't do it justice. I'm all about, to some degree, the energy I get from people when I meet them, the vibe that you get from people.
Sure.
And so while I'm talking to the candidates, I immediately get a vibe that is sometimes wrong and sometimes right.
Sure.
But either way, I think that is an important component that we need to provide the people.
It
Yeah,
is.
and that's
Very
also
well
an
said.
invitation to everybody out there that is running or plans on running. We'll
Absolutely.
spend time with you, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and
Yeah, it'll be
get to know
great.
you. And
Yeah.
hopefully, that'll be a fair way that you can get out in the public.
And making sure that those people are upholding the principles of the Republican Party, because that's the other objective that we have. Not only education, voter registration, and candidates in elections, but making sure that we are a party of people that are principled and are upholding the principles of our party, which is freedom and liberty at its core.
Well, look, any last words? We're at almost that time, so I want to make sure. Any last words? Anything you'd like to say to anybody watching this?
I would just say, join us, LeeGOP.org, www.leegop.org. We need soldiers. We're an anomaly, because in Lee County, to have a chair and a vice chair who are not utilizing the organization as a stepping stone is in politics is an anomaly. So we are truly an organization right now that is being led by people, by the people, for the people. And we need your support, because we are working parents. We are not trust fund babies who can do this full time. And so we need soldiers who can help us keep the organization running. So visit us at LeeGOP.org or give us a call here at headquarters, and let's get to work.
Okay, well, great. Grant, anything?
I really can't do much better than that. I would just say, thank you to the folks out there that have supported us and continue to support us. We appreciate you, and we would love to get more engaged with folks out there. So if you see either one of us, just approach us and talk to us about things. We'd love to get to know the people of Lee County and better.
And do great things.
And look, I'd like to do this again, maybe go a little deeper into local politics and local things and current
Sounds
issues
fun.
and stuff like that. And
Plenty of material there.
yeah, it's plenty going on. So,
right.
but
Let's
again,
educate.
this is the Chairs Chat. We may change the name of it. It may it's in the infancy stage, and the idea is we'll do something like this weekly or every other week or something, and
That'd be cool.
Sounds
get to know
fun.
people and all that good stuff. So I just want to say thank you guys for coming and
Thank you.
taking the time, and
Appreciate it.
good time. I think
Yeah.
get to know a little bit about you guys, so I appreciate it.
Seacrest out.